In the 80s, there were lots of movies about small creatures running amok, like this one, Hobgoblins, which many say is a low-rent version of Gremlins, but I'd reserve that description for Ghoulies. That's still a big step above Hobgoblins, and that's saying something for a movie that has a poster with a monster coming out of a toilet. Hobgoblins is the shit that movie dumped out. But I do prefer it over Ghoulies. It's celebrated for being crap. It was featured on Mystery Science Theater 3000 and has a cult fan base. It's extremely low budget. According to the director's commentary track, they didn't even pay for any of the locations, so they only shot in places they could get for free or get away with without permission. You can easily tell they had a small budget to work with, and to a certain degree, every movie is a result of circumstance. They didn't have the money, or there were certain problems that came up, or whatever. But then there's those weird decisions that go without any plausible excuse. The scene that stands out is when two of the characters have a fight with garden tools. The reason for the fight is bizarre. One of the guys just got home from the army and wants to show off how tough he is. The actual fight is even more bizarre. They basically click the garden tools together repeatedly for over 2 minutes straight. And then the aftermath for the fight is the most bizarre yet. The army guy's girlfriend is happy that he just beat this poor guy to the ground. She calls him his hero and then runs into a van with him to have sex, which is shown by having the van like rock back and forth with a cartoon bouncing sound effect. Then the loser's girlfriend gets mad at him for not being man enough or whatever. Why doesn't anyone help him up or ask him if he's all right? Why do the girls want to incite violence? Who fights with garden tools anyway? This is the type of stuff you can't make up. When you see characters behave in this way, it detaches you from reality and lets you know that you're in for a ride. Like, this is a movie where anything can happen, so get ready. Naturally, the main reason you'd watch a movie like this is for the creatures. For the first 30 minutes, the hobgoblins are not shown, even though there's plenty opportunities. It seems like it's going to be one of those films that keeps them to a minimum to hide the poor special effects. But then, all of a sudden, there they are, and your first sight of them is in close detail and lasting long enough to notice every flaw. To be honest, I think they look pretty cool. The only problem is the movement, or lack of. They're basically just like stuffed toys, and if they sold toys of these, I'd want one. The only way they move is by the puppeteers jiggling them around, and sometimes it's just the actors moving them. It looks real funny. At least one of them is a puppet so it can move its mouth, but that's the best it gets. With all the screen time the hobgoblins get, I'm surprised that not once have I ever noticed a puppeteer's hand. My favorite moments are when the hobgoblins pop into the frame and just hang out unnoticed by the human characters. It happens a lot, like they're just sitting there just bobbing their heads. The effects artist said that the idea was to make something that looked like a hybrid between the two types of gremlins, the Mogwai form and the post-metamorphosis form. But to me, they remind me more of critters, especially since they come down in a spaceship. The gremlins were repelled by bright light, but the hobgoblins are attracted to bright light. At least that's what you're told, but it doesn't seem to affect the plot much. Another fun fact is that the growling sounds the hobgoblins make is from a pit bull, but it was a test recording for Gremlins that was never used, so Hobgoblins literally uses leftovers from Gremlins. Other than that, there's no more similarities. The real strange thing is that the hobgoblins have the ability to make people's fantasies come true, but something in the fantasy goes wrong and kills them. So that's how the hobgoblins kill people, through their minds. It's a concept that is overly complicated for a movie of this nature. For example, there's a guy who keeps calling a sex hotline. One of those scenes was cut from the Mystery Science Theater version. But anyway, the girl on the phone magically appears before him and leads him into his car where she tries to push him off a cliff. This whole fantasy thing is a lot to grasp when just having a bunch of monsters running around would have been enough. But every weird idea the movie has to offer seems to culminate in one 20-minute scene at a nightclub called Club Scum. I don't even know where to begin. There's a waitress with a Marge Simpson hairdo who also dances on stage. There's a generic band that gets way too much attention. Like, did we need to hear the whole song? Then more weird fantasies happen. The army guy starts throwing grenades and eventually gets himself blown up. It just moves from one thing to the next, all within the same location. The director, Rick Sloan, seems very aware of how ludicrous the film is. On the commentary track, he points out all kinds of continuity errors that I would have never noticed. He seems to understand the cult fan base. With some directors, that's not the case. The director of Troll 2 seems to get kind of offended when people call it the worst movie. At least that's the impression I get from the documentary Best Worst Movie. He doesn't seem to go along with the perception of it being so bad it's good. But with Hobgoblins, Rick Sloan totally gets it. A sequel was made in 2009, which retains the same sloppy, low-budget feel. What I'd like to see is all these different small creatures join forces or fight. Ghoulies versus Hobgoblins versus Munchies versus Freddy Freaker. 1-900-490-FREAK. 1-900-490-FREAK.